Geralt is often called the Butcher of Blaviken. You can of course learn how he got this nickname from Andrzej Sapkowski's literary Bible, from Netflix adaptations, or from a Polish live-action versions. Yes, The Witcher was once adapted in Poland, and was absolutely torn apart by critics and the general audience. But was that criticism entirely justified? In my opinion, not quite, and I intend to prove it by comparing how the Blaviken Massacre scene was adapted and executed by both Americans and the Poles. The first thing that stands out when comparing these two scenes is a different color correction, with a much raw, natural, and even correct color palette using mostly natural sunlight. Unfortunately, in later scenes, this worked against the production, causing continuity issues and overexposed shots. Meanwhile, the Netflix version is colder, grayer, and free of any lighting continuity problems. Which style is better? Maybe my patriotism is showing, but I personally prefer the Polish version. What the Polish version does better, however, is building attention. It starts with a shot from the perspective of a crossbowman, positioned on the upper floor, showing the thugs removing their cloaks and preparing for the confrontation with the White Wolf, whose approach is slow and deliberate. Extras walk in front of the camera, adding a mystical aura to the scene. A crucial detail: how do we highlight our protagonist? He is the only one in the frame moving toward the camera, while everyone else walks parallel to him. Netflix, on the other hand, cuts straight to the action with a tracking shot from behind Geralt, shifting focus to reveal the group of the bandits. This removes the sense of entrapment and feels more like a stage fight in an alley. The dialogue is almost identical except for memes worthy,
Fuck.
which, in my opinion, comes off as unintentionally comedic. Henry Cavill, while a great actor, unfortunately doesn't quite fit this role. Maybe it's his appearances, maybe it's the director's fault, or maybe he was just trying too hard to imitate the game's versions of Geralt. Witchers are supposed to be emotionally detached, but Geralt did express emotions. Cavill's stiff face is completely off the mark. Michał Żebrowski, on the other hand, looks far more intimidating and serious. He clearly appears both furious and determined to stop slaughter of the civilians. Even Andrzej Sapkowski himself once said that this was exactly how he imagined Geralt. Let's talk about the fight, and here the differences are truly noticeable. Netflix opted for a master shot, while in a Polish production, constrained by a budget limitations and an inexperienced director, went with a try and tested method of quick cuts and dynamic camera movements to mask shortcomings in choreography and execution. The moment when the crossbow fires is undeniably more epic in the Netflix version, with slow motion emphasizing how Geralt effortlessly deflects the incoming bolt. We also see Geralt actually cutting through his enemies, piercing them with a sword and blood spraying in all directions. The shots mostly use a medium and American framing, with a shaky camera following Geralt, never hiding the brutality of these strikes. The only questionable moments is the artifact. It feels like an unnecessary placeholder. I'm not a fan of Geralt fighting like Starkiller, and Fancy Experts has already criticized this choice. However, it does visually reinforce the idea that Geralt is a true master of swordplay. I also appreciate how he uses his enemies' weapons against them, and the fact that we get a long shot showing the entire group he's taking on at once, which is far more impressive. And now, yeah, that effect looks awful. The intent was to replicate the book description of Geralt being unbelievably fast and almost invisible to his foes, but in reality, it just looks like a cheap YouTube teleportation trick. However, things gets much better right after that. We see Geralt running from a right to the left, the camera tracking him with set pieces in the foreground, an enemy charging from the opposite direction, a quick close-up of a mid-air slash, a close-up of the enemy falling, and the Geralt's landing. The biggest disappointment, his sword isn't even slightly bloodstained, and why is Geralt using a katana? The Polish version is a more dynamic, but the camera work looks like it was handled by a film school student rather than a professional operator. And Renfri's costume is just laughable. Netflix wins this round. Better choreography, editing, and intensity. Unfortunately, the story was heavily toned down. In the Polish version, Renfri, terrified of dying, begs Geralt to hold her in her final moments. But this is actually a last-ditch trick. She wants to stab him with a hidden dagger. Like in the book, this scene carries a very cold, realistic tone. Netflix completely changed the crucial moment. Renfri dies in Geralt's arm, without any deception, simply uttering a cliche Hollywood-style line about it. It's formulaic, uninspired, and totally disconnected from the book atmosphere. In this case, the Polish version wins. So as you can see, while Netflix version is technically superior and benefits from a massive budget, the Polish adaptation had some genuinely interesting creative choices. The problem is that audience are unforgiving. They don't care about the production behind the scenes struggles. They judge only the final product. However, I still think it's worth watching the Polish version, even just out of curiosity. It stays truer to Sapkowski's book and unquestionably has a better casting. And what do you think? Which version did it better? Let me know in the comments.